bombing suspect. Thanks for joining us.
Lockdown in the Boston suburbs tonight. 1 million people forced to stay in their homes after a wild and harrowing night. Gunfire in the streets. Today, it looks more like a military state, a ghost town, while the most hunted man in America is hunted down. Our day-long NBC News coverage continues now as NBC Nightly News gets underway.
Terror in Boston. This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. All day today, upwards of 1 million people were told to stay inside their homes because of the search for one very dangerous man. It has been a harrowing and violent 24 hours, a chain of events touched off when we learned what the 2 Boston Marathon bombing suspects looked like. Then last night, word of a shooting, then word of a shootout. One of the suspects is dead. His younger brother is believed to be still out there, a college student described by friends as kind, intelligent, friendly, and accepting. He is being sought tonight as a terrorist bomber, a bloodless murderer, and tonight life remains frozen in place in much of the Boston metro area. NBC's Pete Williams has led the way for us thus far on this investigation. He's in our Washington newsroom to start us off tonight. And Pete, about a half hour ago, public officials said, in effect, it's okay to come out Watertown and Greater Boston. Of course, it's up to folks to see whether or not they follow that advice.
Right, and I think they probably will, because they're probably getting a bit of cabin fever being cooped up all day when the police were doing several things. They were trying to find this suspect, the brother, the one with the white hat, who was accused of planting the bomb, who survived the shootout. And they were also trying to see whether there were any accomplices, and they've decided that there aren't any, and they probably think that the brother, the younger of the two, is probably left the Boston area. At least that's what their tips have suggested.
And Pete, all day long today, after we learned, of course, that this shooting last night was connected, that these were, in fact, the suspects we were talking about, and we'll get into the timeline of exactly who, what, where, when, and why, there has been this methodical house-by-house search of Watertown by militarized law enforcement, some big, heavy vehicles, a lot of Kevlar-clad men and women going door to door.
Yes, it was quite an extraordinary scene. I mean, first of all, when you consider a major American city locked down, people told to stay in their houses and not to go to work, and the same in Watertown, as they were trying to see whether the suspect was still in the area, whether he had taken refuge in someone's house, and they wanted to try to prevent that everybody stay indoors. They said, don't open your doors unless you know it's law enforcement. So they were trying to make it harder for him to hide, and at the same time make sure that he wasn't hiding somewhere.
A couple of things, Pete, before we let you go. Number one, they identified themselves last night to someone as the Marathon bombers, a very strange turn of events. And number two, by going through what they have left behind and the evidence at their home, we have realized there was perhaps more violence planned. There were devices left unexploded.
And they threw a lot of them at the police as the police were following them. Another one of those pressure cooker bombs. But it's important to remember that this long standoff did not start in the usual way, with the police moving in to arrest the 2 men accused of being the Marathon bombers. In fact, the FBI was not even looking for them, because investigators had not yet matched up any of the names to the bombing suspects' pictures as of last night, and in fact did not even have the names Johar and Tamerlan Tarznayev in their database. So the men brought the FBI to them, apparently by trying to make a run for it. And now that one of them has been killed, they can exploit his cell phone. They can look at every number that he has ever called. They can look at every number that those people have been called and see what relationships there are. A process called link analysis. They'll look at all their emails. They'll look at all of their communications, who they've been talking to with their computer. So they have a lot of information they can now exploit, Brian.
Pete Williams, who again has led the way for us on this investigation thus far. Pete, thank you very much for being with us. We learned today 200 rounds were fired in that Watertown neighborhood last night. Again, a